Welcome to our World of Business panel. My name is Mary Rivnak. I'm an Associate Professor of Management, and I'm also co-chair of our Dean's Diversity Council. Diversity is becoming more valued as a way to innovate in organizations. There's no better way to understand how diversity can create opportunities and success than hearing from our alumni and Cleveland business leaders. So we're joined today by leaders who have had varied career paths, and here to moderate today's session is Dr. Cheatham Adesevan. She's an Assistant Professor of Operations and Supply Chain Management. Cheatham?
Thank you, Mary. Hello, good morning, everyone. My name is Cheatham Adesevan, and I'm an Assistant Professor in the Operations and Supply Chain Management Department here at the Monteahuja College of Business. I have a PhD degree from University of South Carolina in Operations Management. I'm originally from Turkey, maybe you can tell from my accent. And I have an MS degree in Operations Management and Decision Sciences and a Bachelor of Science degree in Management from Bilkent University, Turkey. I've selected an academic route rather than a practitioner route because I knew that I wanted to be in a university environment all the time and where I can do my research and teach about what I enjoy researching about. So I selected something different, but we have very valuable alumni today with us, and we're really excited to hear about their career journeys. Currently, I teach statistics classes, Business 201, OSM 202, Operations Strategy, International Operations Management. So you may see me, you may be taking your classes from me very soon. So it's also good to, meet right now prior to your classes. And without any further delay, let's go back to our panel. I'd like to introduce our panelists today. When I introduce you, please describe your career journey, including a major milestone or a challenge faced along the way. Let's start with Rachel.
I'm Rachel Silsky. I am from the Cleveland area and went to John Carroll University for my undergraduate studies and graduated in 1997. And then I got my MBA here in 2001. There wasn't a supply chain management department at that time, but that was my area of concentration. I took all of my courses in operations management. I was very interested in efficiencies and opportunities for improvement. And so after I graduated, I worked at Avery Dennison as a supply chain analyst for a couple of years. And then I would say that's where I had my sort of turning point. I really liked what I was doing. I enjoyed it, but I had a different passion that I wanted to pursue, and that is working with individuals with developmental disabilities. So I sort of threw in the towel and made a big change with the understanding that I would need to sort of work my way up again in a different field, and that's what I did. So I worked for a nonprofit organization managing staff who go into people's homes who have developmental disabilities and help them with their day-to-day activities that the rest of us maybe don't need help with. I did that for a few years and then ultimately ended up working for the Cuyahoga County Board of Developmental Disabilities. You probably see our billboards and hear our tag on the radio about helping people live, learn, work, and play in the community. I'm a business services manager there. So I work with budgeting and finances a lot. But what has been really great for me is incorporating so much of my supply chain management knowledge and interest into this field, because really there's a place for it everywhere. And so similar to my manufacturing experience in in the public sector, we also need to find savings and improve processes and find efficiencies. So that's where I am now.
Thank you, Rachel. And our next panelist, Vincent.
Hi, I'm Vince Van Buren. I currently work for Philips Healthcare, which is in the process of being renamed Philips Health-Tech. But going back several years to my younger years, I grew up in Lakewood, Ohio. My parents are immigrants from the Netherlands. So going to Lakewood High School, I ran track cross country. As a result, I was a prospect for that in college, and I got a lot of financial assistance and went to Case Western Reserve University for my undergraduate in mechanical engineering. At that time, I also had a minor. I don't know if we still do that, but that was in operations management through the Weatherhead School of Business Management. So after college, I worked for a couple years as an applications engineer in power transmission products. I did that for about 2 years or 2.5 years or so. The whole time I realized that that's not the career really I wanted to pursue. I kind of knew that towards the end of my undergraduate tenure, and I knew that I wanted to supplement that technical aspect of my education with the business side as well. And so, like I said, I worked for a few years, saved some money, and then quit my job and went to Cleveland State full-time in the MBA program, again, specifically within the operations management curriculum. At the time, I think my concentration was called operations research, same department though. So following my MBA, at this point I had a technical background as well as the business side of the understanding, and I worked for Ernst & Young, which at the time had a management consulting division, and I focused in supply chain management, specifically logistics, inventory management, and procurement. Over the years, I've also worked for the management consulting firms of KPMG, LLP, and most recently with International Business Machines, or IBM, their global business services. Within the last 6 months, I currently decided all the travel that's involved with management consulting takes a toll and takes me away from my family 4 days a week. So I now just within the last 6 months, as I mentioned, started working for Philips Healthcare as a procurement engineer. So again, I'm using the business side, the procurement, the supply chain management aspects of my experience, as well as some more of the technical and analytical components of my undergraduate degree, and that's really what I enjoy the most is understanding technical sides of things as well as the business sides of things, because with anything you can have a great idea, you can have a great product, but if you don't understand what it takes to get that product to market and to be profitable from selling and marketing that product or service for that matter, then you're truly not successful, and you know you're not going to make a living in a successful company. But because I do feel, at least myself, I like to understand both sides of things. So that's I think what I would take away from this is I like understanding both the technical side of a business as well as the business sides of things. So.
Okay. Thank you, Vincent.
Yep.
Our last panelist, Natoya.
Sure. Good afternoon, and thank you for the invitation to share. My name is Natoya Walker Minor, and I serve as the Chief of Public Affairs for the City of Cleveland for Mayor Jackson. I've been with him we're in our 10th year, so I've been with him the entire time that he's been mayor. And my bachelor's degree is in political science from the University of Toledo. I have a master's. I earned it as a National Urban Fellow, so I have a master's in public policy from Baruch School of Public Affairs, which is a part of the City University of New York system. So I'm a public administrator that has been launched into the operational side of things. My entire career has been spent as a public administrator, and in the last 10 years, I've delved deeply into the operational side of things. So there's an ongoing debate, and has been for decades, MPA versus MBA. And I would venture to say that either one is fine. It's what you do with it. And it's what you do with the opportunities that are presented in front of you. And it is imperative that you take the opportunity to learn the things that you don't know. So, for example, earning an MPA, my major difference, and this is Natoya's perspective, between an MPA and an MBA is the emphasis on product and the finance component. So when I was thrust into the operational side of things, when I joined Mayor Jackson's cabinet back in 1996, one of our major initiatives was called Operation Efficiency Task Force, OETF. And it was a strategy to get to cost savings. So I mentioned that my limitation was the finance component, to get to cost savings for the city, because 2006 was only 2 years before the huge financial collapse globally and learning what that meant and the intricacies of that. It was on me to do that in my spare time, because that was the job that was assigned to me to do. So we did Operation Efficiency Task Force, and that meant that we consolidated a few departments in the city of Cleveland. We collapsed a few departments in the city of Cleveland, and we began a strategy of doing more with less. As a part of learning how to do that, I spent a significant amount of time with our purchasing department, with our law department, with our finance department, to understand what that meant from the human resource frame. Because in organizations, there are 3 fundamental frames in any organization. You have the human resource frame, you have the finance frame, and you have the operations frame. Any organization, whether it be a nonprofit or a business, has those 3 frames, and that is the infrastructure of every organization. So that is where you find the cost savings when you have to do cost savings, and cost savings always comes back to typically personnel and how you spend that, because in the majority of organizations, personnel, HR, is typically about 65% of the budget. It is, because it's the human resource frame, it's your salary, it's your benefits, and benefits are crazy expensive. They just are. So that's the way I incorporate the public administration side to the business side. I've spent my career has really been spent between 2 major employers. I worked for the city of Cleveland on 2 occasions. I worked for Mayor White back in 1995, completing graduate school for 2.5 years, and I've worked for Mayor Jackson now in our 10th year. I've also worked for the Cuyahoga Metropolitan Housing Authority 2 times in the early 90s, prior graduate school, and while I was there, I applied and went to graduate school, and I lived outside of Cleveland for about 7 years. When I came back to Cleveland in 2003, I found myself working on the same projects at the Housing Authority that I had left 7 years before because of operational deficiencies. So I was able to put on my hat of HR and finance to clean things up, because when you find yourselves in a position where the organization, and specifically the task before you, is in audit problems, especially with a federal agency, you learn quick how to clean things up from an operational perspective to get things back on track. And that is the course that I've taken. Just as a side note, for 5.5 years, because in the public sector typically it's not unusual, I'll say, that you can have 2 jobs at one time because of doing more with less. So for 5.5 years, I served as the Chief of Public Affairs as well as the Director of the Office of Equal Opportunity, which is specific to contracting and how we do our contracting and supply chain and how that manifests itself with minority, female, and Cleveland small businesses from an operational perspective to get to a level of equity and to really level the playing field where possible from a contract perspective.
Thank you, Natoya. I actually would like to say a few words about career milestones and challenges for myself. I know it's a different career path for me, but a milestone, both a milestone and a challenge for me was coming over to US to pursue my doctorate. It was not always easy, but it was definitely worth it. Because of the cultural experience, even in an academic world that is distinct in so many ways that enriched me as a teacher and a scholar. Do you have anything to add regarding a milestone or a challenge that you faced along the way? No?
I think for me, it was going from that technical background into a business, which, I mean, I'll be honest, as an undergraduate, all my classes were, chemistry, physics, math, math 1, 2, 3, 4, I think 5 semesters of calculus. And then when I came over to Cleveland State for my MBA, I started from the beginning. I had to take, basic accounting, basic finance, basic economics, and I mean, for me, it was really like starting over, similar to what you did, you in your career, me from my education, and I enjoyed it, but it was a challenge. I mean, I just didn't have that educational background in me, but it absolutely, I feel, rounded me out more as a professional, having both those sides, both those components of education. That now I feel like I do understand business holistically rather than, I understand the manufacturing side versus, as you were saying, there's the operational side and there's the finance side. I still don't know much about HR, but yeah, so, that manufacturing falls within operations, but it's just, one small component when you think about the supply chain and other aspects of that as well. So.
Any other? Okay. Thank you.
I guess
Sure.
I do have something to add to that. Because I made a similar big change, I guess I think it's important to, when these opportunities happen, to make those changes and make those choices even though they're difficult, because when you tell people that you're going to totally switch gears and change careers, people will say, oh, you don't want to do that. You don't want to start all over again. But and so I think it's important to be brave and make those hard decisions, and it's worth it to end up doing something you really enjoy.
And I think for me, I mentioned that I earned my graduate degree as a National Urban Fellow, and when I won that fellowship, it meant that I had to quit my job because you could not have a fellowship and work, and so my salary went from a comfortable salary to living on a stipend, and that's very difficult when you have responsibilities to do that. But I thought that it was in my best interest, and I'm grateful for the experience because I believe that experience and the earned additional credential in MPA has really launched my career. But that is a big decision. You have a car note. I mean, you have I didn't own a house at the time, but I had rent. I was in a lease, and it's just like Macy's. I mean, all those things. Your makeup that you need, just all those things. Just like, oh my God, how am I gonna do this? But you learn how to do what I call DRP, create a debt reduction plan, real quick when you don't have any money.
Okay, thank you so much. My next question would be, could you give us a common misconception that you believe new graduates have about the workspace workplace today? Is there anything?
I can give you a misconception I had. I don't know what your misconceptions
Please.
are. I actually felt that my education would prepare me for the business world, and it absolutely did not. I mean, there are meeting requirements from an academic standpoint versus meeting business objectives can be very different goals. And I think things like working with groups, especially cross-functional teams. When I say cross-functional, working across HR, finance, operations, manufacturing, that can be challenging. Really in my undergraduate, the only time I ever had group projects, was all with my peers, which were all engineers, and engineers talk to each other differently than business people talk. So I think the one thing that I really appreciate as part of the MBA program at Cleveland State was the fact that we were put in a lot more group type of assignments, projects, whatever you want to call that. And to a large degree, they were more cross-functional in nature, as well as I ended up working with a lot more diverse group of students because, in undergraduate, I felt like everybody was like me, but at Cleveland State, there were people from literally all over the world. I had a bunch of Indians in my class. There were Asians that
There were Turks.
I'm sorry?
There were Turkish people.
Yeah, I don't recall any Turkish people, but no, and I just didn't have that same type of exposure to that cross-cultural diversity that undergraduate that I did in graduate school. But I definitely think that working in that group setting helped me, post MBA versus prior to MBA, and the communication skills that you get with an MBA as well, with business, which I didn't really have as an engineer. So those are things that, like I said, I wasn't prepared for in business out of undergraduate school, that I felt I was supplemented with after I received my MBA. So.
Thank you, Vincent. Do you want to add anything on that? Actually, a common misconception is perhaps at least what I observe is underestimating the benefits of schoolwork. You're actually, as students here, you're learning how to learn, carry out certain procedures. You sometimes learn from your classmates, not from your teachers. You learn how to work in teams, taking responsibility. So it's not just taking tests or writing up projects. You're learning a lot in a university environment. You're not coming to school just to pass your classes and get a diploma. There are a lot of resources that you can benefit from. There are a lot of centers that you can benefit from, organizations, student organizations, a lot of diversity that you can observe in the university here at CSU that will help you grow as a business professional. So it's in line with what Vincent also told us. And thank you so much for your insights. My next question would be, actually I'm sure our students are very curious about what type of wish lists or talent skills that the companies are looking for nowadays from future leaders, and what is the characteristic every emerging leader should possess?
When I receive resumes, the first thing I do is look at the bottom, and I'm probably not the only person who does that. If your resume got to me, then I know you have the degree and the work experience, but it's what you put at the bottom that tells me what your interests are, what groups you were involved with, what you're passionate about. I think that the one thing, the biggest thing on our wish list when we're hiring at my organization is someone who's passionate about what they're doing. And it doesn't have to be passionate about the mission of the organization, but it has to be someone like me who loves spreadsheets and math and that kind of thing. You have to be excited about your work, and that will come through, I think, in your interview. But I'm interested in people who are involved and have experiences, so that we know that you know how to work on a team and in a group, because that really rounds out the education. The education might get you in the door, but it's the way you present yourself, the way you talk about your interests, and the way you give examples when you're answering questions, even if you don't have work experience. If you can cite an example of something you did in a group you participated in, anything like that, those are the things that bring real value, I think. When I was at Cleveland State, I was part of the operations management club or organization. I don't know what it was. I had a graduate assistantship. These are things that I was asked about in interviews, because they show that I did more than just come, attend my class, and leave. That I was trying to develop additional skills.
I'd like to tie that question to common misconceptions, because I think that one of the common misconceptions is that your work experience will give you everything that you thought that your career would give you. And so that builds on the point that I believe that civic engagement and engagement in other organizations is fundamental. Why is that important? Because coming out of business school, you may land a position at one of these organizations, but your passion, things that you may be assigned a role where you aren't able to do internal audit. So where can you find that experience to build your portfolio, your experience portfolio? You can find that in a civic engagement role, on the board of a community development corporation, on the board of the American Red Cross, on the board of United Way, on the board of a myriad of organizations where you are interjected into, or you're responsible for the internal audit role. And you don't even know what that really means, but you took a class on it 3 years ago when you were a sophomore, and now you have that experience. So to your point, when I am also looking at resumes, I look to see how you're civically engaged and what your civic engagement means. Are you just on the board? Are you on the board and you're serving as treasurer? Are you on the internal audit committee? Are you looking at operation efficiencies? Because that tells me that you have another skill set beyond what your employer is using you for. And so I think that that's really critical. So from the wish list side and what every emerging leader should be, you should be thirsty. You should be thirsty for knowledge. You should be thirsty for what will get me into the next door. So how do I make sure that I master where I presently am, but I'm also learning where I project to go? And I think that's the wish list. And I think that you have to sit down and think about that, and think about how you can become engaged in something that'll plant you for where you are, but also project you for where you plan to go.
Okay, thank you so much. My next question would be your advice for our students. Please share your biggest piece of advice for our students today, especially for those who are uncertain about their majors. They probably want to learn if it's a possibility to switch, is it worth it, or what type of pros and cons that they would face along the way. Do you have?
I would say choose your electives carefully, right? Because your core curriculum, based on what your major is well defined. It's pretty much set. You don't have much leeway with that. But looking at the at your electives, the classes you can take outside of your core curriculum, they should interest you, right? They should be things that you, as you think about where you want to go in your career, what you want to do, those electives should be the classes that supplement that path forward, and help you round yourself out versus just those basic classes, whatever you decide you want to study as a major. And the other, I guess the other advice is do as much as you can to get involved with the field you're interested in or the industry, whether that means summer jobs in that industry. If you can get an internship, that's ideal. But you don't necessarily need an internship if you can either, like I said, summer jobs, even doing some research, keeping up with, getting email feeds from the various societies and other business entities that you can subscribe to mailing lists, and they'll give you once a week you get an update on this industry or on in this field of study. When I say field of study, that function within business. So keep up with what's happening so you're aware, and if possible, get yourself involved through direct contact, summer jobs or internships.
Thank you. You're right. Actually, there are great companies visiting our school, and you should definitely use that opportunity. You should talk to many business professionals visiting our school. Talk to your professors, talk to us. We're happy to help always. If you have any questions, we can get you connected to the business professionals as well. Do internships, like you said, Vincent. Try to see if the job is a good fit for you, because they're trying you. Of course, the employers are trying you, but at the same time, you're trying the job as well, so you can see if it's a good fit for you. It's a valuable experience. It should certainly expand your horizons. Anything that you want to add at this point?
I just would say take advantage of the whatever career services are available to you. I did not do that well at John Carroll. I'm not sure what I was doing when everybody else was doing their mock interviews and all of that, but we graduated and everybody had jobs and I didn't. When I was here, I used the career services to help me get an internship and then subsequently a job. So I started a job maybe a week after I graduated. It was much harder doing all of that on my own. And after you graduate, if you need that kind of assistance, you have to pay for it. But you have it here. So I would really encourage you to not make that mistake that I made. It's not the most fun and interesting thing to go look through catalogs, but you'll wish you had done it if you don't, I would say. Take whatever resources are available to you here.
Thank you.
Ditto.
All right. My last question is, how can our students best be prepared while at CSU to compete in an increasingly global business environment? And how does Cleveland area have to offer in terms of opportunity?
I think that Cleveland is ripe right now. And certainly with all of the economic development and the business deals that are occurring and have occurred over the last 10 years, you can see it. You can see the ripeness that is occurring right outside our doors with the economic development. Those things, plus the emphasis on improved education, are building blocks to keep you here. We want brain gain here in Cleveland. We want to grow our population, and we want to continue to reinvest into our population. To compete globally, I think that you should understand who the major employers are and how you can parlay your skill set and your earned credentials into those employers. I think that if you spend time in some of those interest groups, those interest organizations, as has already been spoken about, you will find opportunity to become a part of that. Participating in the Career Center and in those interest groups, whether it's operational efficiency, subcommittee or internships, will give you a competitive advantage in a Cleveland-based organization. That, coupled with an internship, can get you the opportunity so that a week or two after you graduate, you are employed. And I think that is there. Vincent mentioned those electronic engines. Some of us receive all those emails. I receive emails all the time just to keep me on the cutting edge from a language perspective, because language becomes so pertinent when you're talking to somebody that you're interested in becoming a new hire. And so those emails that I receive, some of which just look like junk mail, I always peruse them so that I can be on the cutting edge of the verbiage, because the verbiage changes. And what's the buzzword for today? It changes. And you want to know that as opposed to not know it, because the person in front of you will know whether or not you're reading emails or periodicals to stay on the cutting edge of your preferred profession.
Can I also add something you can do, like starting today, is as you go through your studies and you do have group projects, learn from working with a group, because in business everything you do is group based. Everybody has individual assignments, but all those assignments eventually come back to a project or to a greater group of a larger scale of something that more people are working on. So as you work and you get assignments that are group based, learn how to work with your peers and your colleagues, so that you're collaborative and you're taking each other's ideas, and it forces you to brainstorm and think outside of your own comfort zone, something that you would never have thought of. So don't be afraid to speak up in your groups, and let others know what your thoughts are, because there's no right or wrong in brainstorming and in group discussions. The whole point is to get the others to think of things that they might not have thought of without your input. So the more you speak up, the more you have something to say, the greater chance there is for something like that to happen. And to me, that's diversity, because with a diverse group, and as I look out, you have a diverse population here at Cleveland State, and so you already have the inputs to that diversity mentality and input. Now you just have to make sure that everybody participates. You learn from each other. You collaborate with one another, and you work effectively. It shouldn't be because it's a group project doesn't necessarily mean it's a social hour. Have fun, absolutely, and use that time to become acquainted with each other, but also use it to learn how to work effectively as a group, because in business and in any job, that's
You're right.
everything you do is
Absolutely
group
right.
based.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you so much. Yes, Rachel?
I would agree with what they both have said. It's these soft skills. It's knowing the language. I work for the County Board of Developmental Disabilities. If someone comes in and says something offensive, their interview is over, even if they're a great candidate. Working in a group, things like the discipline of not saying you're going to do something if you can't get it done. Don't let people down. It's those things, because when you apply for a job, you might not know how to do the exact job. I used to be a cashier in high school. I didn't know how to work a cash register. They hired me because of who I was. Your employer will teach you the specific skills that you need. They're looking for the right person. It's how you present yourself, the eye contact, the handshake, asking questions. You might have an interview where they take you out to lunch. You want to know what silverware to use. It's all of those sort of soft skills too that really are so important along with your education. So.
Stated.
Excellent. Perhaps we can get some questions from our students. Do you have any questions?
So the question is, I said that if someone uses incorrect or offensive terminology, that their interview is over. Now that is more important in my field than it is in other fields. But so I guess I would say offensive terminology about people with developmental disabilities, because my assumption is if somebody is coming in for an interview, they've at least done enough homework to know what is offensive and what's not. They should have looked at our website and looked to see what the appropriate way is to refer to individuals with developmental disabilities. Before the interview, many times when I was applying for jobs, I was asked a question about the company I was applying for because they wanted to know if I had done my homework. If you have an interview, you need to research the organization so that you're using appropriate terminology, you know what the company is doing, and so that you're prepared if somebody tests you to see if you did your homework.
Yeah, just be professional. I mean, ultimately, that's what it comes down to. You know, don't say things you wouldn't say to your parents or you know, to your kids. You don't have any probably, but you know, just be professional. And if you keep that focus on that, you'll be fine, I think.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, please.
So, you guys basically told us a lot about what a business expects out of us. What should we expect from a business or a place that we want to work at in the future?
Yeah, I'd love to answer that because I think so many times today, everybody is trying to understand what is this company looking for from a candidate? What do they want from me, let's say? And nobody spends enough time understanding within themselves what they want from their company, from their employer, from a company. And I mean, that answer is probably different for everybody, but every company has a unique culture and they have a personality. And, you know, yes, companies have personalities. And I think the biggest thing with an interview, the interview shouldn't be some sort of a test in terms of understanding, like, oh, you know, if a train was coming to you in this direction at 50 miles an hour, and an interview should never be that type of situation. An interview should be that time when the company is understanding if you fit into their culture, into their personality, and if you, from your end, if you fit into the you know, into that culture. So before every interview, know yourself what you want out of your employer, and try to confirm that they can meet most of those requirements before going into the interview. And each of you have to understand that individually. I certainly can't tell you what you want out of your employer.
I agree. Don't settle. If you know what you want and you go to an organization and you think, I'm not sure if I'd be happy here, you probably won't be. And then you've wasted time and we have to hire someone else. So don't settle. Know your value.
And that's why it's really important to do the homework before the interview. So, you know, you have an interview on Monday. Spend the time this weekend looking at that website. If they have annual reports, look at their annual reports. When I go on interviews, I always look at if they have a board, who's on that board, so that I can understand what the personality of the company is. I look at the finances. Are they in the black? Are they in the black but close to the red? Are they in the red? You want to know that. Where are they investing their resources? From a financial perspective, once you see where they're investing their resources, you will see what's important to them based on where they invest their dollars so that you go in prepared. Sometimes annual reports will share whether or not they have emphasis on professional development. So what you can expect out of an organization, if you're the candidate for this organization and we're going to hire you, you can be at least informed that they will pay for this professional development but not that professional development, because some companies today will pay for professional development but they won't pay for educational reimbursement. And so I think that you have to think about, how do I get the best out of this opportunity? And you get the best out of the opportunity, and supervisors are willing to invest in employees when employees are performing, meeting and or exceeding goals, and it's worth the investment in you as an employee to send you to that professional development in expectation of greater earnings, greater profits, greater performance outcomes in your capacity. But it also expands your competencies and prepares you for whatever is next.
Thank you. Perhaps we can get one last question if you have any. If you don't, yes, there's one question there. Yes.
When you said getting an internship, isn't that important? Why are internships important? 'Cause through high school, all the teachers and all the parents have told me that internships are what gets your foot in the door.
No.
Why are or why aren't?
Why aren't they important?
Why aren't they important?
Did
I
anyone
believe
say
we
that?
didn't say they aren't.
I said that the internship doesn't mean, if you don't have an internship, that doesn't mean you're not going to get a job. It helps. It certainly helps, and it does get your foot in the door. But there's other. I guess my point was that there's other mediums as well. There's like I said, an internship versus a summer job are two different things. There's summer jobs. There's understanding, what's going on in that industry. There's other ways to get some of the experience you might get out of an internship without getting an internship. The unfortunate thing with internships is there's typically not as many internships as there are students looking for internships. And so if you're not fortunate enough to get an internship, don't let that stop you from looking at other ways to get that real business experience. And that was what I was trying to say.
Actually, I'm curious about one little point. Maybe this can be the end of our discussion. I'm researching about nonprofit supply chains, and I was wondering if you have any input about nonprofit volunteering experience briefly. How that would help in learning the business, because there are a lot of parallelisms between for-profit sector and nonprofit sector.
And I'll chime in, and that's the point that I was trying to make when I was saying that I always tell young people, I drive the point, make sure you get a job in your respective field, but also spend some time civically engaged. And the reason why is so that you can be involved in the annual fund development campaign. You can be involved in the capital campaign. You can be involved in the internal audit committee so that you can understand the intricacies of the operations of a nonprofit. In addition to your degrees, I also want to stress that there are executive certificates. There's an executive certificate in nonprofit management. I have one. They have them here so that you can understand the dynamic of the nonprofit sector. The nonprofit sector is moving more towards a business model that is mission driven. Tons of research around that. Spend some time. What is your passion? And because wherever your passion is, trust me, there's a nonprofit out there, because there are so many nonprofits in this community and in this country, and they exist to provide the social services and the things that both business nor government will provide society. That's why they exist in its simplest form. But they have a responsibility to work beyond passion, because passion only gets you so far, because those that are investing, i.e. corporations, foundations, individual donors, no one's going to invest if you aren't performing and you aren't changing outcomes. That means you have to embrace the business model, going back to human resources, operationally, a lot of contracts or cost reimbursement, which means that you have to look at your profit and loss statements to make sure that as you're paying out, you have income coming in, that you're billing on a regular basis, that if employees change through natural attrition, that you're hiring so that you don't have extra $1,000 in a position because you didn't backfill, and someone's got to pay attention to that. And that is the business model that is occurring in nonprofits. Why? Because they can't exist, again, for passion. They have to exist for performance. What are the outcomes? You can be mission driven, but you've got to have those performance indicators, those performance outcomes, because those that are investing in you want to see that. How's that relevant in Cleveland's environment today? About 18 months ago, United Way of Cleveland changed its priorities, sent shockwaves through Cleveland. Shockwaves. Those priorities were based on needs in this community, and some of those that have been receiving funding from them for decades now weren't funded. Why? Performance outcomes and those type of evaluations. There's a committee that United Way has, and I sat on it for about 8 years, called organizational assessment. Why is that important? To get you back to the business model for productivity, to make sure that the investment, there's a return on the investment. And that's a business term, that's a business model, and that's why that's relevant.
Thank you very much. We want to thank the Office of Inclusion and Multicultural Engagement and Monte Ahuja College of Business. We'd like to thank our panelists and our students for joining us today. And let's give them a big applause.
Thank you.